Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine waking up to discover that everything you've ever believed about God was backwards. Not that he doesn't exist, but that the being billions call loving might not be as loving as we've been told. It's a disturbing thought, one that many people refuse to entertain. But tonight, we're going to. Across the world, billions of people believe in a creator, a God who is all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly just, infinitely loving. Yet that same God is also said to judge humanity, demand worship, and punish those who reject him. For believers, this is the greatest being imaginable. For skeptics, it raises a question that refuses to disappear. If God truly exists, is he actually good? This documentary isn't about mocking religion, and it isn't about proving that God doesn't exist. It's about putting one of humanity's oldest questions under the microscope. Tonight, you'll hear the strongest case against God's goodness. Then, later, you'll hear the strongest defense believers have offered for centuries. Only then can you decide where you stand. So imagine, just for this documentary, that we're inside a courtroom. God is on trial. The prosecution rises, and the first piece of evidence is suffering. Every day, innocent children die from diseases they never chose. Earthquakes bury entire families beneath concrete. Floods wipe out villages. Animals spend their lives killing and being killed just to survive. Millions cry out for help, and heaven remains silent. The skeptic asks, if God has the power to stop this, and chooses not to, how is that love? Believers often answer with two words: free will. God gave humanity the freedom to choose. Without freedom, they argue, love wouldn't be real. But the skeptic isn't satisfied, because another question immediately follows. If free will is so important, why weren't we given the freedom to choose whether we wanted to exist in the first place? None of us asked to be born. None of us voted to enter this world. None of us agreed to live under the rules established before we ever took our first breath. If the consequences of this life are so enormous, whether heaven, hell, enlightenment, judgment, or something else entirely, why wasn't the very first choice ours? Why create conscious beings without asking whether they wanted to be created? If freedom is sacred, why doesn't it begin at the very beginning? The skeptic continues. We're told that choosing not to worship God can carry eternal consequences in many religious traditions. But if I never chose to exist, how can I be held responsible for a test I never agreed to take? Imagine being brought into a courtroom against your will, handed a list of rules you never helped write, and then being told that your eternal future depends on how well you obey them. Would that feel like justice? Or would it feel like a game whose outcome was decided before you ever entered? The questions don't stop there. If God already knew every decision every person would make before creating the universe, he also knew every tragedy, every war, every betrayal, every child who would suffer, every person who would reject him, every soul that would face judgment. Yet he created this exact world anyway. Could he have created a different one? One with less suffering, less confusion, less pain? If the answer is yes, why didn't he? If the answer is no, is he truly all-powerful? And if he knowingly chose this reality over every other possible reality, what does that say about his character? These questions have challenged philosophers, theologians, and ordinary people for centuries. And the prosecution has only begun, because many skeptics argue that suffering isn't the hardest question religion must answer. The prosecution now presents its second accusation. If God is infinitely loving, why create hell? For billions of believers around the world, hell is more than a symbol. It is described as the ultimate separation from God, a place of unbearable suffering, or, in some traditions, a punishment that never ends. The descriptions may differ from one religion to another, but one idea appears again and again. Reject God and face consequences beyond imagination. The skeptic asks a simple question. If a human father told his children, "Love me, obey me, or I'll punish you forever," would we call that father loving? Or would we call him abusive? Then why should the standard be different simply because the one making the demand is God? Believers often respond by saying, God doesn't send people to hell. People choose it. But the skeptic immediately asks another question. Can a choice really be called free when the alternative is eternal punishment? Imagine someone pointing a gun at your head and saying, You are free to refuse. But if you do, you know what happens next. Would anyone honestly call that freedom? Or would they call it coercion? Then comes another troubling thought. Many religions teach that God created every human being. If that's true, then God also created every person he already knew would reject him. Every atheist, every skeptic, every follower of another religion, every person born into a culture that would never even hear the version of God considered true by someone else. If God knew their final destiny before they were created, why create them at all? Why bring someone into existence, knowing they would face eternal consequences? Wouldn't true love choose not to create them, rather than create them for a future of endless suffering? And what about those who never had the same opportunity? A child born in one country may grow up following one religion. Another child, born thousands of kilometers away, may sincerely follow a completely different faith. Both believe they're honoring God. Both pray. Both seek truth. Yet many religious traditions claim only one path leads to salvation. The skeptic asks, is someone's eternal destiny determined by where they happen to be born? If so, where's the justice? Then comes one of the most emotionally difficult questions of all. Many religions teach that God is perfectly forgiving, that his mercy is beyond human understanding, that no one can match his compassion. Yet some traditions also speak of sins that carry irreversible consequences, or warn that rejecting God until death leaves no opportunity for forgiveness afterward. The skeptic wonders, if God's mercy has no limits, why should his forgiveness have a deadline? Why would infinite compassion end, while punishment continues? The prosecution isn't claiming to have all the answers. It's asking whether these ideas fit together. Can perfect love, perfect justice, and eternal punishment all exist at the same time? Or do they pull against one another? Then comes one final question before the defense is allowed to speak. If God truly wants every human being to know him, why remain hidden? Why reveal himself in ways that sincere people continue to debate thousands of years later? Why allow countless religions, countless interpretations, countless disagreements, and then hold people accountable for reaching the wrong conclusion? If the truth is meant to save humanity, why isn't it unmistakably clear to everyone? These questions have echoed through history. They've filled libraries, sparked debates, shaken faith, and led millions to walk away from religion entirely. But a courtroom has two sides. The prosecution has finished presenting its case. Now, it's time for the defense. Because believers insist these arguments tell only half the story, the courtroom falls silent. The prosecution has asked difficult questions, questions that have shaken the faith of millions. Now, the defense rises, not to dismiss those questions, but to answer them. The defense begins with a simple statement. What if we're judging God by a standard that only makes sense for human beings? Imagine a 5-year-old child watching a surgeon cut open a patient's chest. To the child, it looks cruel, painful, unnecessary, but the child doesn't understand what the surgeon understands. The operation hurts because it's meant to save a life. Believers argue that humanity may stand in the same position. Our knowledge is limited. God's, if he exists, would not be. So the defense asks, could there be reasons behind suffering that human beings simply cannot see? The prosecution asked, if God is loving, why doesn't he stop evil? The defense answers, because a world without the possibility of evil is also a world without genuine freedom. Love that cannot be rejected isn't love. Kindness that cannot be refused isn't kindness. Courage cannot exist without danger. Forgiveness cannot exist unless someone has first done wrong. Believers argue that free will is what gives our choices meaning. Without it, humanity would become nothing more than perfectly programmed machines. The prosecution responded, then why didn't we choose whether we wanted to exist? The defense answers, can someone who does not yet exist make a choice? Choice itself requires existence. Believers argue that existence is not a punishment, but a gift that comes with responsibility. The prosecution challenged hell, asking how a loving God could allow such a thing. The defense responds, justice without consequences is not justice. If good and evil truly exist, then our choices must matter. Some believers also argue that hell is not simply a place where God enjoys punishing people. Instead, It is the ultimate consequence of permanently rejecting a relationship with him. Others interpret hell differently altogether, seeing it as separation from God rather than endless physical torment. The prosecution asked why God remains hidden. The defense replies, if God revealed himself with undeniable certainty every moment of every day, would people freely choose him, or merely submit because they had no alternative? Faith, believers argue, has value precisely because it cannot be forced. Then there is suffering, perhaps the hardest question of all. Believers don't deny its reality. Many admit they struggle with it themselves, but they argue that pain has often produced compassion, sacrifice, courage, medical breakthroughs, acts of heroism, and extraordinary kindness that might never exist in a world where nothing ever went wrong. This doesn't erase suffering, but they believe it gives suffering meaning. Finally, the defense offers one last thought. If there is no God, then words like justice, good, evil, right, and wrong are ultimately human opinions. The very act of calling God wicked assumes that objective goodness exists. But if objective goodness exists, where does it come from? Could it point beyond humanity to something greater? Or is morality simply a product of evolution and society? The courtroom is silent once again. The prosecution has spoken. The defense has answered. Neither side has convinced everyone. And perhaps that is exactly why this debate has lasted for thousands of years. So now, the verdict belongs to you. Is God misunderstood? Or are the critics asking questions religion still cannot answer? Whatever your conclusion, don't stop asking questions. Don't stop examining your beliefs. And don't accept an answer simply because it is comfortable. If this documentary challenged the way you think, leave your perspective in the comments. Whether you're a believer, an atheist, or still searching, your voice matters. If you enjoyed this kind of deep exploration into religion, philosophy, and the biggest questions humanity has ever asked, subscribe to Unboxed Belief, because sometimes the questions we're most afraid to ask are the ones worth asking the most. Thank you for watching.